Okay, welcome to another video. So Elementary OS 6 Odin has just been officially released, and as you can see by the tagline of this announcement, it's the biggest update to the platform yet. So the 22-minute read time for this announcement should help drive that point home. So I did briefly check this out during its beta period, but I'm super excited to check everything out now that it's in its final form. So as it's such a large update, we're not going to spend too much time going through the announcement before we jump straight into it. But some of the main new features of this release are the new dark style and accent colors, which will give you a nice new dark look with a total of 10 accent colors to choose from. We then have the sandboxing and portal, so every application in the AppCenter is now distributed as a Flatpak. And then of course we have the multi-touch support for touchscreen and touchpad users. The notifications have been completely redesigned. There's a new task application and the mail application has been rewritten. There's also been improvements to the files application and a whole lot more, so I'll leave a link to this announcement in the description below. It's available to download from their website right now, and it has an ISO file size of 2.36 GB. With that being said, let's jump into the live environment and get this installed. So we've just booted into the ISO. Now we are going to be installing this on native hardware, but as per usual, for those of you who like to skip the installation parts of these videos, there'll be a timestamp down below which will take you straight to the installed desktop. So first up, we need to choose our language, which for me is of course English. Select. We're then going to choose United Kingdom and select. And now we're going to choose our keyboard layout, which again is going to be English UK, and I'm going to leave it on the default and just test it. It's all working in that box below before we go to the next step. Okay, so we've got a few options here. For those of you who want to try it out on the live environment, you can go ahead and select try demo mode, or we can do an erase disk and install, or a custom where we create the partitions and all of that good stuff ourselves. I'm going to do an erase disk and install and let it create the partitions for me. So it's now going to see which drive we want to use, and we're going to use again the Samsung SSD 860. Erase and install. So we can do drive encryption. I'm not too worried about that for now, so we're going to click don't encrypt. And that's it. So I'm going to pause the video here and come back once this is finished. And there we go. The installation has completed in no time at all, and it really doesn't get much easier than that. As far as user accounts, that all happen when you first start booting off disk. With that being said, let's reboot into our freshly installed Elementary OS. And now we have the final setup steps before we can get into the desktop. So again, English UK, leave it on the default, select, and here's where we can now create our user account. And now we can finish setup and get into our desktop. And that will take you into the nice and simple looking login screen. Let's quickly run through the welcome to Elementary OS screen, and then we can start taking a look at some of the new features. So next. Choose your look. We'll leave it on the default for now, and we're not going to mess around with the accent colors either. We'll get to that in just a moment. Night light, so that can reduce strain on your eyes. It's a good thing to use at night. Housekeeping, so we can automatically delete old temporary files and trash files. Yes. Online accounts, again, we'll do that in a moment as well, because we're going to use it to sync some of our mail, calendar and tasks, and especially take a look at the new tasks app and the rewritten mail application. Next. Get some apps. Again, we'll do that in just a moment. Okay, we are ready to go. Right, so before we start taking a look around and checking out some of the newer features, the kernel version we are currently using is 5.11.0-25. And having a look at the output from LSBLK, we can see the default partition layout it's given us when we chose erase disk and install. So we've got a few LVM partitions here with the single root partition, and it's also given us a swap partition of around about 3.8 GB. Now we will check out RAM usage on a fresh boot towards the end of the video. The default shell is of course Bash, and we are using X11. Now for those of you not super familiar with Elementary OS, we are of course using the Pantheon desktop environment, and it's very nicely themed and well polished out of the box on Elementary. So we have our dock at the bottom here, which is using Plank, and we don't have the option by default to do the icon zoom. As you can see there, here's all the settings that we can do, but they do have their own section of settings that we can control the dock that we'll go into in just a moment. And then to the top we have our panel, which is completely transparent at the moment, but if we was to open up an application like so, go into the maximize view, you can see it's now gone into a completely solid color. So that is a dynamic, so it's going to change that with a very nice smooth animation, and then your dock is also going to disappear or auto hide or intelligently hide to make it a lot easier to focus on the application you currently have maximized. And I'm a big fan of the way that all works. Now in our panel at the top left we have our application launcher. So by default, it's going to be spread just in no categories whatsoever. But if we click that button, we can then see the categories to the left and then go through the applications like so. And out of the box, Elementary doesn't ship a whole lot of default applications. We'll spend a tiny bit of time going through some of them in just a moment. And then we have the page indicator at the bottom, so we can change the page. Now, that is bound to your left super key and also your space bar. So if you press a left super and then space, it's then going to open the same as what you do if you was just to click it. Now, if you're unsure of any of the keyboard shortcuts on Elementary OS, if you just press your left super key, it will then open up this shortcuts window with some of the most commonly used shortcuts that you're going to be using. Then in the middle of the screen, we have our sort of date and time, and then clicking that will open up a nice little calendar here as well as your events, and we can jump straight into the date and time settings as well. Now in the top right, we have kind of like a sort of system tray kind of area here. So we have our power button where we can go straight into the user account settings, lock, log out, suspend or shut down. We then have our notifications with a do not disturb toggle, and we'll go through some of the notification settings in just a moment. We then have our current connection, so we are using Ethernet, so we're using a wired internet connection. And then we have our sound settings here, and we can also see that if we have music playing in the music application, we could also pause and skip around, and then we have the other sort of devices that we could switch to. Now, like I said, we don't have a ton of applications installed out of the box, but the ones that we do have fit very well with the Elementary OS distribution. And we always have the AppCenter to install some new applications, and a lot of these applications are actually going to be Flatpak applications as opposed to native applications, which we'll go into in just a moment. So we have our AppCenter, we have Calculator, we have Calendar, we have the Camera app, which I do believe had some new updates in this version, Code, Document Viewer, Files, which has been improved in this newer version of Elementary OS, as well as the rewritten Mail application. We then have multitasking view, so you can also see this on your dock beneath here as well, and that will get you into sort of multi-desktop mode where you can move things around in different workspaces and all of that good stuff. We then have our music application, a photo, screenshot, system settings, which we will spend a fair bit of time on, the new tasks application, terminal, and then on the last page we have two more applications, which are videos and web, which I do believe is Epiphany, and this is one of the applications that is actually a Flatpak. So if we close this off and then just open up a terminal using left super and T and typing in Flatpak list, we can see what Flatpak applications we are actually using out of the box. And as you can see, there's quite a lot there for some of the core applications that Elementary OS ships with, which shows you how sort of in they are going with the sort of Flatpak way of distributing applications. And I kind of like it, to be honest. So we have the Elementary platform, we have the Calculator, Camera, Screenshot, Tasks, Mesa, Gnome Web, and Event. So all of these are Flatpak applications, and then the rest are going to be native applications, and we'll go through all of that good stuff in just a moment. We're now going to spend a bit of time checking out the new dark style theming and accent colors and how it blends in with the rest of the desktop and Elementary. So in the system settings, we're going to go straight to personal and desktop, and here's where we can pretty much customize the whole look of our desktop as far as Elementary OS allows you from their system settings anyway. So we have the wallpaper selection, and they always have been very good shipping a nice selection of different wallpapers that blends really well with the overall look and feel of Elementary. And then we have the appearance here. So at the moment we're using the default style, so it's going to be this nice light theme that we've all come to know. But then we have the option of the dark theme here. So before we switch over, we're going to go ahead and open up the Files application and see how that looks in its sort of default look and feel. So very nice and clean, nothing to complain about there. If you like a light theme, it looks very nice. Now if we close that off once more and then go and select the dark style preference, we can see what that looks like. Now as you can see, it's also changed the theme of our panel dock at the bottom. So if we go into the preferences here, as you can see in appearance, we're using the GTK, so it's going to follow that. So every time you switch it over, so if we just close that once more and then go back into default and then open it once more, you'll notice that the actual theme itself hasn't changed. The thing that has changed is the system theme in the system settings. So let's go back onto the dark theme and see some of the other applications and how they all look with this nice new theme, and then we'll check out some of the different accent colors. Now let's go ahead. Yeah, I noticed this in the beta actually. It sort of, whenever you change over the theme, it kind of misses the text that's supposed to be in the application launcher, which is a little bit annoying, but I'm sure that's easy enough to address in an update. So what I'm going to do is quickly log out and then log back in, and that should take care of that little issue we're facing there. Right, so we've just logged back in. Let's make sure that the application titles are now right where they belong. There we go. So a small little issue that I'm sure will be fixed, and it might not be happening for everyone. So as we can see here, we have all of these different accent colors that we can choose from, and then that's going to affect various parts of your desktop and the applications you are using. So as you can see in the selection here, that's actually changed from the highlighted color. So we're currently on this yellow here. If we go back to a green, we can see now that that's gone to follow that color, and there'll be other parts of the desktop that follow that same accent color. So for example, if we open up our application launcher, we can see that the outline of the search bar is also going to follow that color. So again, we can just switch it to a purplish kind of color, and then there we can see actually the dark theme with the purple looks quite nice. And of course you can always use that again with the light theme as well. Also in the appearance section, we can change the text size from small, default, large and larger. And then just beneath that, we have a little toggle here for dyslexia friendly text, which is a cool little accessibility feature that I'm very happy to see on a mainstream distribution like this. So if it makes it easier for someone to use, then that's definitely a cool thing to have included. And then we have the dock and panel. So we've seen all of this before, but like I showed you, when we go right click into preferences and then change it through here, they've actually implemented a much easier and user-friendly way of doing it straight from the settings here as well. So we can change the icon size for some pre-configured sizes of small, medium and large. I quite like the small. I'm probably going to leave it on the small, but for the rest of the video we'll leave it on the default so it's easier for you guys to see what's going on. And we can also choose hide when, so when any window overlaps the dock. So for example, if we go close to the dock, you'll see that it's got a very nice smooth animation off the screen down the bottom. Now we do have a few different options here as well. We can do focus window is maximized, any window that overlaps the dock and then not being used, and we can also set the pressure level, and then we have the panel and the panel translucency. So like I said at the beginning, the panel translucency is dynamic, so whenever you do full screen and maximize an application, it's not going to look like weird with a whole lot of space there. It's going to go into a solid color. But if you didn't quite like it being transparent at all and you're someone who prefers actually having a solid bar there, you can then disable that entirely. Now I quite like the way it looks without that, so we'll leave that like so. And then here we have the multitasking options, which are for sort of hot corners for those of you that like using them. I'm not a huge fan, but you've got 4 configurable corners on your desktop that you can do certain actions like so. Now before we spend a bit of time checking out the AppCenter and using it to install some new applications, we're going to do a reboot to see how much RAM we are using on a fresh boot before we make any changes and see how we go. Okay, so we just started back up and run htop in the terminal, which is installed out of the box, and as you can see, RAM usage is actually looking really good. I don't remember it being quite that good in the beta, but I might just be remembering it wrong. But we're sitting at under 600 MB at around about 544, which is very good for a fully fledged desktop operating system. And now we're going to spend some time with our AppCenter. So it's a very simple and clean interface, much like most of the applications that Elementary OS ships with. We have just a search bar at the top right to search for apps, and then we have 2 tabs here for home and installed, which is where you can also see if any of your applications or operating system need any updates. But it looks like we are all good to go. So on the home page, we have a few sort of recently updated, and then we can also jump straight into the categories. So I tell you what, as Elementary OS doesn't ship with an Office application, let's jump straight into Office and see what we have in the actual AppCenter itself. So we don't appear to have a whole lot here. We have Badger, so remind yourself not to sit and stare at a screen for too long. We have the calendar, which is installed out of the box. Events, Ordinate, Tasks and Typewriter. So not a whole lot there for Office applications. So we might go ahead and use something else to install an Office application like LibreOffice in just a moment. So let's see what we do have though. Let's go straight into Internet. And let's see if there's anything we might want to grab here for the Internet. So we've already got GNOME Web, and we don't have this IRC client here. We do have Mail, and we don't have a torrent application like so. So let's just go ahead and use Pay What You Want. So usually if you like the application, I do actually recommend buying them, but as we're just going to do a quick run through and I've never used this before, we're going to go ahead and grab it for free. Okay, so the installation for Torrential has finished, so now we should be able to go straight into our application launcher, search for Tor, and there it is. So if we just quickly go ahead and open that up, we can have a quick look at how this looks. So that's the first time I've seen this torrent application before. Again, very nice and clean interface. And if we just quickly go ahead into our system settings Let's make sure it's all working with the sort of new dark style theming as well. So we're going to go straight into appearance and go to dark. And there we go. So everything does work very nicely and cohesively when you're using Elementary OS, including the AppCenter and the applications that are currently on there. And as with more time, there'll be more applications using the sort of pay what you want method, which I actually do support. I think if you really do like an application that's made by a developer and you can afford to give them a bit of money, I think you should probably go ahead and do it. Now, like we said in the beginning, all of the applications in the App Center are going to be packaged and distributed through Flatpak. So if we go ahead and type in Flatpak list once more, we should have one new addition to our list now of torrential. And there it is. So that's very cool. Now, sticking on the topic of applications, another cool thing with Elementary OS 6 is if we go into the system settings, we can actually sort of have a bit of control over the permissions that an application might use. So again, under the personal tab, if we go into applications, we have our defaults, we have our startup, which is currently empty, and then we have the option here of permissions. So as you can see, we've got a few applications to the left here, and then we can control which permission each of these applications uses. So let's go and use our new one that we've just downloaded. So here we could choose whether we wanted to give it full home access to our folders, including any hidden folders as well as your system folders, devices and network, which is currently enabled as you would expect for a torrenting application, Bluetooth, printing, secure shell agent, and then your GPU acceleration. And it should be pretty much the same sort of options for each of these applications, and you can see here exactly what each application has the permission to use. So for your tasks, we can see that again we're using network, because with the new task application it uses, I do believe, CalDev, so you can sync it with your online accounts, which we will spend a bit of time on in just a moment. And it's also using your GPU acceleration. Now, for something like a calculator, you wouldn't really need anything. So as you can see, nothing is enabled in your permissions. It won't be using any network services as it is just a desktop calculator. And it's really cool to have a nice simple way to view all of that and see if somebody's using a permission that you don't really think it requires, and then you can very quickly and easily disable it. So I'm a very big fan of this way it's been implemented in the applications settings. Now, with the new tasks application, you can of course just use it locally, but it does work with the CalDAV service. So I've set up a dummy account with a free service, and we're going to see if it works with the inbuilt tasks application on Elementary. Now, before we do that, very simple stuff. In the left bar, we have our schedule, so any tasks that are currently upcoming. As you can see, we have no tasks. And here we have a few lists, and we can add a new task list just like so. And when you do that, it will give the option of local, or if you've got no accounts there, we can go straight into the online account settings. Now, on our personal list, to start a new task, all we have to do is just click the sort of empty text field there, write whatever the reminder or the task may be, and then we can set a due date, set location, and we can also add some details of that task, and then that's going to appear there. And then to start a new one, again, very simple stuff. Now, let's close all of this off for now and delete these tasks and see if we can get an online account working and make sure it's all working with Elementary OS's task application. And that's very simple. So all we have to do is go into the online accounts and then set up a CalDAV service for calendar or your tasks. And I've got the server URL here, so we're going to see how this works. So I'm just going to press a login, and there we go. So it's found the account, so we can give the account a display name. So let's just say testing, as this isn't my personal CalDAV sort of tasks, but we could go ahead and set this up on our other devices, so things like your laptops or your smartphones, and then you can sync all of your tasks and reminders and calendars across all of the devices on the one account, which is very cool that Elementary OS now includes this as a standard on their desktop. So we've got calendar and tasks. Let's press save. So we are all done. CalDAV account has been added, and then there we can see it there as well. And again, to start a new one, all we have to do is click CalDAV, or we can of course also add IMAP for our email client. Now that we've done that, let's go back into our other desktop and see has it worked. It has indeed. So as you can see here, we have now got the testing there. So that will now work across all of the devices that are using that same account for the tasks and calendar, which is very cool and something that I personally use a whole lot, because I'm often someone that's got a whole lot going on but my memory's not great. So I need an application like this to help me keep on track and remind me of what I'm supposed to be doing. Now, through the online accounts, we've also very simply added our email account, so we can check out the email client that's been rewritten. And of course, I'll be blurring out anything that I need to keep private. And here we are. So it's loaded the inbox with all of the folders without any issues whatsoever. And again, a very nice and clean, simple interface on Elementary, which will of course follow all of the nice system theming as well. So we're currently on the dark style theme. So it's a sort of 3-column kind of setup here. On the left we have our email addresses as well as the folders that are included. We then have the sort of list of the folder, so we're currently in our inbox folder with all of these emails here. And then to the right we have the current email that we are looking at, which is a Spotify email trying to get me to sign up for premium, which I'm not going to do. So I'm not too worried about having to sort of blur out that. But what we can do is, if we want to start a new email, we have the compose new message right here, which we can also access using Control and N, like so. So then we could write any email address that we wanted to do. And then we've got the body of text here with a few simple options for bold, underline, italics, strike through, and then we can also remove formatting, and then we can insert link, and then to the bottom left we can then delete the draft, and then we can add an attachment. So again, a very simple application just to manage your email addresses, send new ones off. You can also flag, archive, and all of that good stuff. So again, very simple stuff, but a nice in-house email application to use on Elementary. Now moving on to the calendar, this will of course have the same account that we set up with that CalDev that we use for our tasks applications. If we go into the settings here for manage calendars, we can see this is actually the sort of account that we are using there for the sort of tasks and calendar. So that's all working out of the box as well. So I'm very happy about that. I think what we'll do is move on to the camera application, which has also seen some improvements in this newer release. So I've plugged in an old webcam. I'm not quite sure what direction it's going to be pointing in, so this could be interesting. Okay, that'll do. It's a super simple interface, and it does actually support multi-camera support now, so you can switch between your different cameras. So we're currently on just the camera taking mode. Let's take a quick little camera sort of image like so. And then we can also switch to the video mode, and again we can press this button and it will also send you a sort of in application notification once that recording is being done. It doesn't appear to like this camera at the moment, but again, it's a very old webcam that's probably dying anyway, that I've not used in a very long time. So let's stop that now. So that's saved, and it's going to default save to your video folder in your home directory. So if we go into our home folder now in our files application, we should then be able to see our new video and open it with the default videos app and see how that's all working. So let's go into videos, which is going to be using a single click to sort of activate a folder. So we've got the folder here called the webcam, and there it is. Let's go ahead and click that. Now with the sort of way it's going to sort of use your sort of clicking in the files application, it's going to be a single click to enter a directory or a folder, but it's going to use like a double click to actually activate an item. So let's say we wanted to go into webcam with a single click and then actually select that and go into the properties and all of that good stuff, we can do. And then if we wanted to actually view this in the sort of the default application that it's registered to, we can then do a double click, and then there it is, going to go ahead and open and play back in the default videos application. And just to wrap up with the camera application, we also have a little toggle here so we can get into the brightness, contrast, and we can also got a little toggle here to set to mirror or to disable the mirror as well. It's a very cool, simple, easy to use webcam application for Elementary. Now there's also been some small changes made to the actual desktop itself. So if we go ahead and right click on the desktop, it will now expose a menu for you to very quickly and easily jump into the change wallpaper, display settings, or system settings. So we can just very simply right click, change wallpaper, and then get into the desktop section of the system settings with just a click or two. Very simple stuff. Now if we go onto this desktop here, we've got a window open, and then we go into the multitasking view. Now when you hover over a window, it's going to give you the title of the window. So we're currently on my website, and then as you can see, it's got the name of that window there when you hover over it, and then when you're gone it disappears. So a very small and simple change, but it should make it a whole lot easier when you've got a lot of stuff all on the sort of one desktop and you're just using your mouse very quickly to hover over and see which window is which. There's also been some changes made to their screenshot tool itself, which I'm actually quite excited about, because it could make things like taking a quick screenshot of your desktop and chucking it into an image editor a whole lot easier. And to demo this, we've gone ahead and installed GIMP. I haven't tried this yet, so we're going to see how this goes. So we're going to open up our application launcher. We're going to go into their screenshot tool. You can also now move around this window by clicking anywhere on the window itself. So we're like there. As you can see, it's very simple to move that around to anywhere you might want. Now what we're going to do is just take a screenshot, and then once the preview window comes up, I do believe that we can either just copy to the clipboard and then copy it into GIMP, but we should also be able to just drag and drop the preview image like so. Okay, that's very cool. I'm very much impressed by how that works. It's very simple little things like that that do make using these sort of simple tools a whole lot more intuitive and fun to use. So big fan of that small little change there. So to install Flatpak applications that you can't find alternatives for in the App Center, you can very easily side load them. So all we have to do is go onto an application that we want. So for example, we're going to go ahead and get LibreOffice. We're going to click install and that should download the file that we need. And now that's done, we're going to go ahead and just open that, and we're going to let that take over the installation of this application. So here we go, install untrusted app LibreOffice, and it will tell you the download size may be up to 1.1 GB. Updates to this app will not be reviewed. Other apps from this distributor may appear in the App Center, and then of course I understand, and then we're going to click install anyway, and then that's going to go through the steps of installing the Flatpak application for you. So a very simple way to sideload Flatpak applications on Elementary. Now that our application is installed, we can go ahead and open the application, and we can also press this to move that .ref for the Flatpak application into our trash. And there we go, so that's installed the LibreOffice Flatpak application for us without any problems. And we should also be able to use the permissions options in the settings itself to manage the permissions that is using. So again, we're going to go into applications, permissions, and then we should see LibreOffice right there. And again, it's going to have the same options available, and we can see what that is currently using. So it has access to our system folders, our network, and again our GPU acceleration, and we can of course revoke access to any of those permissions at any time that we might want. So very cool. Now moving on to one of my personal favourite newest features of this release are of course the touchpad gestures. As someone that's quite often on their laptop when they're away from their desk, I really do like interacting with my desktop and distribution using the touchpad to navigate around different workspaces, etc. And the new touchpad gestures on Elementary are absolutely brilliant. So by default it's a 3-finger swipe to switch to different workspaces, and it pretty much is one-to-one tracking motion, so you can go as fast or slow as you want, and it will follow the movement of your fingers almost exactly. We then have 3 fingers swipe up for a multitasking view, and again very simple and fluid and fun to use. And then we have an additional pinch which isn't enabled out of the box, but you can use it for things such as zoom. As you can see here, we can use it with either 3 or 4 fingers to zoom into our entire desktop and then back out again, all working very fluidly, and I'm a massive fan of the new touchpad gestures on Elementary OS. Now the new touchpad gestures don't just stop at navigating through your desktop, there's also some cool in-app things that you can do with it. So for example, if we was to open up the App Center, we can use our touchpad gestures to just go through the different screenshots like so, very simple, starting backwards and forwards. And if we go into our notification center at the top right here, I've used a website to send me a demo notification. As you can see, we can also just slide our touchpad along to then delete and dismiss the actual notification itself. Now sticking on with notifications, let's send a few dummy notifications and see how that all works when we get a new one come straight in. So we're going to send a notification. There we go, so it's just popped up very nicely in the top right corner. We're going to send another one, and another one, and another one. There we go. So now if we go into our notification center once more, we can see that we've got a whole lot there. Let's just close this window for a moment, close those tabs, and now let's go back into our notification center. And of course we can just keep one by one deleting them, or we can just use this little toggle here to then get rid of every single notification. And here is where we can also jump into the notifications settings and see what we can do with the notifications. So at the moment we've got all of them enabled for the bubbles, the sounds, and the notification center. And of course you can manually choose which applications do have notifications enabled, and you can also fine tune them. Say you only want sound for your file manager, you could then disable bubbles and notification center and just have it on sound, and really just fine tune the way your applications interact with your notification center. So overall, as far as the desktop itself and the user experience Elementary delivers to those of you that use it as a daily driver, as time's progressed I've become more of a fan of it. There are still little niggling things that I would personally prefer to be done, or ways to do things, but other than that I think they do give a very nice, polished, out of the box user experience that most people should be happy with using. And of course the system settings is home to a lot of settings that you can go through and just tweak it to your liking. But for those settings that aren't included out of the box, you can go ahead and install the Pantheon tweaks for Elementary, And then that will give you a few more things that you can do. So if we go into the tweaks there, we can change the sort of appearance settings a bit more than what they allow you to, as well as fonts, animations, miscellaneous, etc. So if you're one of the people that do like to tweak around with things, it might be worth going ahead and grabbing that application as well. Right, so I think that is where I'm going to wrap up with my refresh look of Elementary OS 6 Odin. Now, all in all, I've actually really started to warm to Elementary OS and the way that they do things. There's still some things, like I said, that I would probably do a little bit differently, but I think if you're someone that wants an attractive, fun and easy to use distribution out of the box, Elementary OS 6 is definitely a very good choice. Now, I've used it quite extensively throughout the beta, and today now was the official release across different desktops and devices. So we started today's video on the desktop and we have now ended it on the laptop, and I think that is where a distribution like this shines even more so, especially with the new touchpad gestures. Now, if I was to choose some standout features that I most like in this release, it would actually be the touchpad gestures, but of course not just on your desktop. I'm a big fan of the fact that we can just of course use it in different things like your notification center, and when you're in sort of the AppCenter going through different screenshots and all of that good stuff. The notification redesign is very cool. I like the tasks application as someone that does heavily rely on that kind of thing, and I really do like the dark style preferences for your theming, as I'm someone who much prefers to use a dark theme at any time of day as opposed to a light theme. I think I've touched most of what I wanted to touch on this release announcement, but like I said in the beginning, there's a whole lot here and I've no doubt missed some stuff that you might want to go ahead and read through yourself. So I'll leave a link in the description below for those of you who want to read a bit more. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe and also join the Discord. There's a link in the description below, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.